Our first guest up today is Reggie Greer, who is the LGBTQ plus voting director for the Biden-Harris campaign. Before that, Reggie had a whole host of other posts, including at the Victory Institute, where they were a constituent engagement director, and before that in the Obama administration. So Reggie, thank you for joining us tonight to talk about what the Democrats might have in store for transgender non-conforming people if elected. Thank you so much.
Mara, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, you're looking awfully rested, you know, after the convention last week. What's going on? I mean, I expected you to be shattered. I mean, but look at you. I don't know.
Well, thank you for the compliment. You know, I certainly don't feel rested. You know, since the selection of Senator Harris as the running mate, you know, you've seen this very intentional shift to the general election, obviously with conventions, and so, you know, I'm talking to my colleagues well into the nighttime hours. I'm up early now, but you know, we have 69 days to go, and I know the discussion that we're going to have today about, you know, what does this mean for the trans community and for the non-conforming folks and non-binary folks, is that it's so worth the time and energy that will be spent over the next 69 days to ensure that we get new leadership.
All right, so with that, let's get down to business. So let's assume that we all know, as we spent a lot of time on this program talking about the ways in which the Trump administration has so far spent targeting trans people, whether it be in education, access to healthcare, in the military job, a whole host of things. So let's just assume that, and let's not spend a lot of time, you know, going into that record. Answer people in our audience who would ask you, why should I support a Biden-Harris ticket? What is that going to do for me that's not being done now?
Absolutely, Amar, and I'm actually glad to start here because, you know, I would love for people to think about how we can come together to shape the future. I think we spend so much time talking about, you know, what has happened to our communities and what's happening to our communities that we don't get a chance to explore how exciting it will be when our people are at important decision-making tables again and are really fighting for a future that we all can be proud of. But for Vice President Biden and for Senator Harris, the first place I start is that they see people. They see people no matter who you are, no matter where you come from. So for people who are trans and people who are gender nonconforming, for the entire LGBTQ plus community, especially those who are marginalized, Vice President Biden has made it clear that he wants to fight for our entire community. In order to create policies that are equitable and that are fair and that lift people out, lift people up rather, and really sort of get to the root causes of some of the issues that we face, you have to see people. And you know, if I may go back to what has happened over the past 3.5 years, and what is happening this week, is that the Republicans are attempting to use our communities to distract from the fact that they've spent the 3.5 years discriminating and really sort of pushing our communities back into pushing our communities away from important decision-making tables by getting people to think that the Trump's Republican Party isn't as transphobic or isn't as homophobic as we all know it is. Then somehow voters from all stripes and then say, okay, well, maybe I can hold my nose and vote for them again. But let me be clear, another 4 years of the Trump-Pence administration would be disastrous for LGBTQ people, especially for trans people. And you outlined all the ways in which they've attacked our community. And Vice President Biden has said, you know, first, that trans issues are the civil rights issues of our time, you know, thus really doubling down on his commitment to not only bringing trans issues to the forefront, but ensuring that people who look like us are at the table to be able to create the policies that we know need to be created to move us forward, to reinstate trans service members, to ensure trans people can get the health care that they deserve, to ensure that trans kids are protected again, and can use the facilities that match their gender identity and so forth and so on. So, it is cliche to say, but I think it's absolutely appropriate to say that our lives are at stake. And I know we're celebrating Marsha P. Johnson and her birthday, and she had a famous quote. She said that until there's no, and I'm paraphrasing here, but there's no, we can't celebrate until all of our people are free. And again, I'm apologies for not getting that quote right. But she's absolutely right. She was right then. She's right now. Her legacy and her words are timeless. And in order for us to ensure that we can all walk into a future together that is fair, that is worth celebrating, we have to make sure that we're fighting for everybody. And that certainly includes everyone in our community.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the quote is, "There's no pride for some of us until there's equality for all of us." Something like that. I think it's something like that. But yes, now I'm paraphrasing. So you listed a whole host of things in there. Equal access to healthcare, being able to have access to the restrooms that match gender identity, overturning the military ban, and others. What do you think is the main policy affecting trans and gender nonconforming people that the Obama administration would say, here are all the things that we want to do, but this is the thing that if we do this, we think it'll make a big difference in the lives of trans people? What would that be?
Absolutely. Well, forgive me, I'm going to answer this in two things, rather. I think that first and foremost, you think about the epidemic of violence against trans people, and especially trans women of color, and the power of the federal government to actually do something. And I think that, the reason why you hear people say, I don't think it's worth voting, or I don't think my vote matters, is because they don't, intentionally so, anti-LGBTQ folks have intentionally gotten people to see government at its worst, and to really embrace or always see the dysfunction. But if we take an issue as important as fighting and addressing the epidemic of violence against trans people, you're talking about the LGBTQ Essential Data Act, which, in passing that, would ensure that we start to list gender identity and sexual orientation on everything, so that people who are thinking about how can we get LGBTQ people, especially trans people, from survival into thriving, that can be the basis of good public policy that comes out of every federal agency. So having the White House direct federal agencies to really embrace that act once it's passed into law, which is why it's so important to ensure President Biden has a Congress that he can work with on a whole host of issues. The Equality Act being another big piece of legislation that would enshrine anti-discriminatory policies into the law, so that we are protected and are able to thrive in so many different ways. So that's where I would start there. But as I just mentioned, the Equality Act is probably the big one, right? Because I do think that people don't know how many opportunities are kept from LGBTQ people in public accommodation, in essential services, in education, in employment. And of course, the Supreme Court had the fantastic ruling this summer. But thinking about the ways in which LGBTQ people are discriminated against, and then understanding that trans people and people who are gender nonconforming are disproportionately impacted by the levels of discrimination in our country, that passing that piece of law would immediately improve the lives of trans people. So, getting out there and working hard over the next 69 days means that we can take a law that's right now languishing on the desk of Mitch McConnell, who could care less, like Donald Trump and Mike Pence, about not only trans people, but Black people and brown people and immigrants and women, keeping policies away from us that they know would benefit our lives.
Mm-hmm. And just for people who don't know, the Equality Act would essentially write into civil rights law trans people to make sure that we were barred from discrimination in almost every area of life that you can think of. So that's the Equality Act. So there are a lot of people in our community, and what would you say to people who are skeptical about the mixed record, is a fair way to put it, of Senator Harris on trans issues, specifically as it relates to the provision of healthcare and transition services to trans women who were in California prisons. What would you say to trans people that have reservation about that, given that the issue of incarceration and also its parallel one, which is sex work decriminalization, but let's just stick to the incarceration side of the ledger, is a major concern of our community? What would you say to those people?
Oh, absolutely. And well, first and foremost, I think that this entire campaign has been so appreciative of people who come forward to speak their truth in their minds. I mean, you can't build a good government until you are able to celebrate, understand, embrace, listen to people's lived experiences, and then understanding the folks that you need to go further and find and understand, what are they going through. So let me, unequivocally say that Senator Harris completely supports all the essential services that incarcerated trans folks and incarcerated LGBTQ people in general would need to live and to exist. Whether they are incarcerated or not, that's a right that people are entitled to. And so when you think about the law, and I know that it is hard to always know people's intention versus what happens, and I think it's always worth talking about, right? But I would say that Senator Harris has spent her entire career, and same with the vice president, in truly understanding what needs to happen, even if that means that after something happens, that it's worth going back and trying to rewrite memos and update codes and update policies and fight to change the law from within. And that's exactly what Senator Harris did even after some of the incidents that happened in California. So she has been a champion for LGBTQ rights her entire public career, and I know she and Vice President Biden, if elected, will be the most pro-equality ticket in the White House, and will take that intention and make the right laws and policies a reality as a result.
Yeah, so I think what we'll just say is that regardless of what the opinion of what happened in the past, and what you're saying is that going forward, that there is some increased sensitivity and openness around these particular issues, and the need to make sure that they're addressed in a different way. It's just distilling what you mentioned right there. Yeah. And lastly, I'm wondering whether or not this campaign and trying to expand the tent so that we don't end up in the situation, or the country doesn't end up in the situation as it did in the last time, with essentially 70,000 people in 3 states deciding the election. If the campaign will or will not be speaking, either candidate will be speaking kind of in a full-throated way about some of the issues that you spoke about and the policies that you spoke about. I understand that what you have outlined is what is the position of the administration, but I also think that what a lot of people feel is that there hasn't been a lot of moral leadership in the country around trans people and trans issues. And I'm wondering if either candidate is planning on showing that over the next 69 days in a way that we haven't seen yet.
Oh, absolutely. Mara, I think that's, I've really enjoyed speaking with you tonight. And I think that's actually a great place to sort of center our conversation. In this virtual campaign reality, you get fewer opportunities to like talk about any issue, which I think that has made this entire time really interesting. But throughout Pride Month, the Vice President and Dr. Biden were out there talking to different communities virtually, different pride parades, about how important it is to fight for trans issues and fight for trans people and fight for LGBTQ equality. And it was such, I think, from a personal standpoint, such a pleasure to be a gay Black man with a disability right after the murder of George Floyd, sort of in a moment where even it was some days hard to understand what's happening to our country, to know you had these these leaders, and we hadn't been fortunate enough to welcome Senator Harris yet to the campaign, but to know that they were out there caring and willing to sort of listen to not only the queer people on the campaign, but the Black and brown folks in the campaign who were telling them that we needed to exhibit the kind of leadership that going forward. The fact that Vice President Biden has already said that trans issues are the civil rights issues of our time, and then thinking about some opportunities coming in the future, I have no doubt that the Vice President and the Senator will meet that moment and talk about what it is our community needs to really move the needle forward. I think when you talk about having a platform and an agenda that's the most pro-equality in history, I know that following that up with action and with rhetoric isn't easy. So, from my vantage point, my position, to be able to say that even knows that, tells me that we have two leaders in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who are willing to back that up with action. And that makes my job really exciting, because then I'm listening to people that I admire from our community, activists and advocates, who are saying, Reggie, here's what's happening in the community. I know I'm going to remind you of it. And here's the data and here are the stories. And taking that back to the Vice President and the Senator to have them say, let's do something, I think it's really exhilarating to know, especially in contrast to what we have right now.
Right.
To people who don't even see us.
Right. Well, I think that that's important, and I appreciate that. I think that the Vice President may have said that in 2014 at the time of Laverne Cox appearing on the cover of Time magazine. And I think that the question, would remain from our community about just making sure that there's more leadership over the next 69 days as well. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time. There's lots of things and places that you have to do to try to get to where you want to be on November the 3rd. We will provide a link to the LGBTQ platform and policies of the Biden administration. That is in our chat. Actually, someone asked a question about what are the policies that the administration would put forth. Not only did you answer that earlier, but that is in the chat. So please go there and look at that. Reggie, again, thank you so much. And we're wishing both candidates safe times on the campaign trail. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and congratulations for all that you've achieved. And I'm just so proud of the new podcast. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was Reggie Greer, who is the LGBTQ plus vote coordinator and educator and director, kind of everything on the Biden-Harris campaign. You're looking at Lives at Stake. Please know that our plan tonight was to have Reggie, who you just heard from, and someone from the Republican National Committee or the Trump campaign come on to speak about what their positions are on trans issues and where they stand. After repeated attempts at outreach, we have yet to hear back. You're watching Lives at Stake.